Good morning all, well welcome to Black Sheep Wools. It is Love Your Yarn Shop Day, although I keep coming out with the Americanism and saying Love Your Yarn Store. I've been keeping told off all week. And we've got the lovely Louisa Harding with us today, helping us celebrate everything that is good about your independent yarn shop. So Louisa, lovely to see you, as always. Yes. Now, who taught you to knit or crochet?
My grandma taught me to
Was she
knit.
Fabulous?
She was, as I remember, she always seemed to be knitting.
Right.
Yes, but you know, very much from the generation of make, do and mend, and you know, the cardigans were constantly on the go, and she was constantly mending things right up until she died, actually. So definitely that generation.
How old were you when she passed away?
I think I probably was a... Oh, I was pregnant with my son, so
were you...
I'm not going to say that.
Were you a better knitter than her then? Did she ever see the point?
Yes, actually, she was absolutely amazing, because she always, one of the first garments I ever made, I made for her, and she was like, how do you come up with these ideas, and how do you think about all these different things? Because she was definitely a knitter from a pattern book, whereas up until I went to college I'd never knitted a full garment, so I'd never knitted from a pattern book. I'd come from it from a totally different direction than she ever did. So no, she was amazing. So.
And what was the first thing you ever knitted then? What was the first full project?
It was when I went as a placement student to Rowan Yarns.
Oh really?
And they asked me in the evenings to go away and do some designing, and to maybe do for an editorial for a magazine.
Right, okay.
And up to that point, this was in my third year at university at college, I did textiles and fashion at Brighton. And during sort of in the evenings, he said, oh, go away, take the yarn. But up to that point, I'd only knitted swatches. I'd never knitted a full garment.
So you weren't a knitter from a young age?
No,
wow.
I always say I'm a designer who uses the medium of hand knitting.
Right, as opposed to a knitter who's come at it from that way.
Yeah. So I'd never knitted a full garment, and I charted it all out, and I started knitting in the opposite direction, because you read left to right.
Yeah, of course you do. So you do your chart from left to right.
So everything came out transposed.
I wonder why we do charts from right to left. Actually, it doesn't really make much sense, does it?
Well, I suppose because you're visualising what and in those days,
so you can,
like late 80s, so everything was kind of picture knits. But the first garment I ever knitted, they actually put in a Rowan magazine.
The first one ever.
The first one ever.
That's not a bad start, is it really?
It was photographed in Rowan magazine number 6.
Well, no, I don't think they'd have put the knitted scarf I did for my dad when I was 7 in the Rowan magazine. Although he does still have it.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Do you still have your first garment?
I haven't got it, but I go around to different yarn stores and I tell them this story about the first garment, and it's amazing the number of people who go into the back room and pull out this book.
And what was it? What was it like?
It was based on, you know, when you're little, when I was little, I had a coat, a Harris tweed coat that had a velvet collar. And this garment is based on that, so it's a little camel cardigan with a blue chenille collar.
Yeah. Chenille's coming back.
Yes,
Could be the time to bring it back out again, you never know. So do you knit in a studio, or do you also still knit at home for pleasure? Or do you...
Well, I work from home.
Yeah.
So I've got, it's interesting because people keep emailing me and wanting to do interviews and say, oh, can we come and see, you know, your studio and everything. And I literally work from home, and it's any surface. I do have an office desk that's got my computer on it, but it's on a tiny mezzanine. You can't... Right. You know, it's big enough for my Swift and a ball winder and a computer. And people think it's going to be really glamorous, and it's not.
I'm spotting a theme here with Debbie Bliss, who we interviewed a few weeks ago. She said very similar. She said she actually utilises the pub quite a lot as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's your favourite place to knit?
I suppose actually at the moment it's the conservatory, because it's the warmest room in our house.
It's not that warm up in Yorkshire, is it, at the moment? No. You've obviously got a worldwide reputation. I mean, I was lucky enough to meet you in America earlier in the year and was amazed by the queue of people that want to check that you are Louisa Harding. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are Louisa Harding. What knitwear designer do you admire?
I think coming from sort of totally different angle. I was really lucky and fortunate in my very early career when I worked at Rowan to work a lot with Kay.
Yeah. Oh wow!
And
right. Okay.
you know, sit on his floor and you know, be immersed with yarns and watch him as he created things. And I think his standpoint on craft and knitting,
yes,
it comes in a totally different. As I say, I'm a designer who uses the medium of hand knitting.
Yes.
He's a textile artist, you know, he's not bothered about the commerciality,
no,
how many colours to put in something, and you know, working in that respect. So working with him's been amazing, and he's not just a knitwear designer.
No,
he does fabrics, he does everything, and if you go to his house, and I've been so fortunate,
beautiful.
It's amazing because each room is like a piece of art.
Wow.
You know, you've got all these amazing wallpapers, because for a while he was doing wallpapers, and a lot of his photography that's in his books are actually photographed in his house. You know, rooms full of tiling, just
beautiful.
Amazing. So him, but I also look to fashion designers as well, because that's really was one of my first loves, is fashion, and I did start as a sewer.
Right, okay. So
that's how I really came to textiles, was as a sewer. So, you know, spending hours in the V&A Museum in their textile galleries. Fabulous. So each season I'm very much looking to what's trends on the catwalk.
And what's going to be the trends for autumn winter this year, do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of fur around, which is rather
that's
fortunate.
Quite good for the look to you then, which is one of our favourites last winter as well. Oh, that's a, do you have a sort of knitted treasure or something that you've obviously not got your first garment anymore, but is there something knitted that reminds you of a special time or a special place?
Not knitted. I've got my grandma's sewing box.
Oh, have you?
Yes. So she had a wicker basket, and it's full of all her kind of needles and pins and button boxes, and so that they're the treasured things, is, you know, that sort of connection. And actually in my little mezzanine office I've got my grandma's kitchen table, so I always feel
that connection.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, the whole handcraft thing is very much a female sort of sensibility, and it's passed down the generations. And
well, there was an amazing piece, if you saw it on the British Sewing Bee, where they did about the rise of the sewing machine, and the fact that actually the sewing machine, they peeped that the communities would club together, and it became, that's really why the sewing bee started, because they'd literally sit together and take it into, and I just think that's amazing, because it gave them that opportunity to earn money outside the home as well, didn't it?
And I do come from a family who, you know, I've got both my grandma's sewing machines that have been passed. One was her mother's and one was her aunt's. So, you know, I've got those at home, the old Singer sewing machines. One's a treadle and one's actually a handle one. And again, she still used that.
I learned to sew on a treadle, a sewing machine, a treadle Singer. And it's amazing now how many people you see do use them. They go for a small fortune on eBay. Yeah, I don't blame you.
Family heirlooms.
And do you still knit for pleasure for yourself? Or is it a commercial thing?
I think it's Bassmans holiday.
Yes.
Really. If you're doing it all the time, you are, you know, you're working under deadlines all the time.
Yes.
We've just had a photographic shoot this week, so, you know, the weekend spent finishing things off, sewing things up, finishing. My husband will go, you know, that's it. You need a break. Put your needles down. You know, you need to just have a break from it. But then you get itchy fingers.
Yeah.
And you can't actually, you think, right, I'm going on a car journey and it's going to be 3 hours. What can I take with me to do? And I think it's very much that kind of, as a you know, somebody who is creative, you think, oh, I can't waste this time. You know, the idea of 3 hours in a car is wasting time, isn't it? If you're not driving.
We went to Northumberland in a motorhome a few weekends ago, and my darling daughter jumped up and down on my project bag and snapped my needles. And I had a 5-hour journey home with nothing to knit, and I was horrible.
You're like,
but it also stops me from moaning too much at Matt's driving.
You've got to concentrate on your stitching.
Okay, if you were going to give us one knitting tip, and you can't use swatch, because everybody reacts says swatch, which basically means the most important thing you can do is do your tension square. If it wasn't tension square, what would it be?
I always like to cast off knitwise on the wrong side, because it stops things rolling. It stops your fabric rolling.
Actually, no, it don't, yeah.
And the other little tip is when I get to the end of casting off,
yes,
I knit the last 2 stitches together and then cast off the last one.
Okay.
Because then it stops it kind of going up to a point.
Right. That's a really good tip actually, because mine always does, and I try and keep my needle in till the very end and pull it down. You know, like you do when you're doing a knot for sewing, and it still doesn't make any difference.
No, so once you get to the last 2 stitches, knit those 2 stitches together, and then cast off those 2 stitches, and it stops you getting sort of a pop.
Yeah. That's the first time anyone's ever given us that tip, so thank you very much. And thank you for joining us for Yarn Shop Day.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.